الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا علما برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. So I actually need to share this. Social media, eh? Alright. So, how's everyone doing? Alhamdulillah. Is this still in the thing? Alright, so why can't I have a girlfriend or a boyfriend? MashaAllah. So, well, that's my name. So why can't I have a girlfriend or boyfriend? Because it's haram. Any questions? We've got one question. What does haram mean? Haram means Allah doesn't allow it. So, but the real question is here, is that enough of a reason for you? Yeah. Good. So if that's enough, then we don't really need to do anything else, right? Someone's calling. So we don't really need to do anything else. And to be honest with you, this should be enough. Yeah? If Allah just says something's not allowed, then it's not allowed. But Allah Azza wa Jal also wants us in our religion to learn about things. So you have to ask, you have to inquire, you have to understand. Because the one who knows is more knowledgeable, is more closer to Allah than the one who doesn't know. So it's not wrong to inquire, but, and I'll explain it here, we believe in Allah Azza wa Jal. And we believe that Allah only does good things to us. Right? So Allah is not doing something to make your life horrible. Yeah? So Allah is not just trying to kind of poke fun at you. He's doing something, and everything He tells us to do, and everything He tells us not to do, is because it's good for us. So what we need to do is we need to try and understand why Allah is doing it, but not try and refute it. And I see this a lot. So I have sometimes you get young people coming to question you, and they're questioning you, trying to find why the answer is wrong, not trying to find why the answer is right. Does that make sense? So, if someone comes to you and they have a girlfriend, and they say, why can't I have a girlfriend? What are they asking you to try and prove? They're trying to find out, I want to keep this halal, right? And then to keep it okay. Give me a reason why. I'll give you a classic. This is for the adults amongst us. How many times have we asked the mortgage question? You don't need to go if it's halal or haram. But whenever someone asks that to you, what are they actually asking? I want to take a mortgage. That's what they're actually asking, right? And they're waiting for you to say, just halal and stuff. You can watch the video about that. That's on YouTube. So, I don't know why there's a million animations there. So, I'm going to do this interactive because at the end of the day, I need the questions and the answers to come from you. So, here's a question for you. There's a lot of young people here, mashallah. So, here's the thing. Go earn money now and quit school and find a job. Who agrees? Who thinks they should do this? One person at the back. Who disagrees? Okay, why? Okay, fair enough. So to find a good job you need education? Yes? Not sure? Duha? Dua, sorry?
There are many years to come, so there's still a lot more knowledge that we don't know yet. We're still not as knowledgeable like we can be more knowledgeable, and with more knowledge comes better job, what's it called?
Opportunities.
Opportunities.
Good, so you're not ready to get a job. You kind of feel that you need to wait a bit more to get a job, right? Any other thoughts, Rowan?
You might have less time to think about what you want to be because I have a lot of choices.
Very good. So you want a bit more time to find out, okay? So these are really good answers. Yes, doctor. It's horrible. Say, it's horrible to get a job. Is it horrible going to school? Who enjoys school? We've got a couple of nods. Inshallah, it's good. Yeah. So, but you all agree. So apart from the one who disagreed, so you think you should get a job now? Why?
Because I can learn a lot of life lessons from it, and I can expand knowledge. So I can But many people don't have the value of money that they go and spend on money, and then you can work hard and find the real value of it.
Very good. But you think you should quit school to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, fair enough. So, where's he can get a lift home by himself today. No, I think that it's a very good point, and this is the thing here. So what we're also talking about here is the idea of playing the long game, and this is the first principle. So when you're doing something and when you want to make a choice, you've got a choice. Do you have your enjoyment now, i.e. you can earn an income, but adults here, anyone want to give him a job at the back? No? No one. Why? Because you're not ready. So when you're working, we understand that you're not going to quit school to go and get a job, right? You're going to do that. And that principle here is called playing the long game. So even though you're suffering now, it's hard work, you've got stress, you've got exams, you've got all these things, you are patient with that, even though you can, if you wanted to, go and quit and go and get money, right? But you know that you don't want to, because if you wait, it's better. Does everyone understand that? So, I don't know why it keeps flashing at you, just in case you miss it. So then here's a question then. Here's a second question. It's a bit odd. Can your mum have a boyfriend? The first reaction to that is always a bit like, okay? But I want to ask this in a serious way. And there's a reason why I'm asking this question here. So who thinks yes? Good.
You're not classifying the husband as the father as the boyfriend.
So I didn't say that, but so you think you can have it, but it has to be a husband? Of course. That's it. So I'm assuming you'll believe your mum should have a husband, because that's your dad. Unless there's problems at home or something. But I think generally speaking, we don't. Now, why do you not think this is fine? You must have a reason, right? I've only got one person putting their hand up, but I know it's a bit awkward, so I'll kind of put some things here. But why would you think? Why is this wrong? So you all had this gut reaction of like, But what I'm trying to do here is unpack what's already in your mind. Why are you saying this is wrong? Go on, Abdullah.
It would just be like a very mix around. You never know what that man has already.
Because you don't know what that man is. Exactly. Is he going to be there all the time? Is he not going to be there all the time, etc.? Yeah? Your dad would be very mad. Okay? Which is good, but why is he going to be mad? Yes?
It's amazing, even if the father dies and the mother is a widow, and if she decides to get married, a lot of children object. They can't even see their mom marry another man, although it's halal. So by nature, it seems children don't like their mom to go run after.
Good. So the question here that you've got to ask is, we're okay with, I'm assuming, how many of you are okay with your mum and dad being married and being together? Everyone, right? So there's something different here. It's not about the relationship, it's about the nature of the relationship. Does that make sense? So it's not that it's not like a man and a woman can't be together, it's that they have to be together with conditions. And we all have those conditions, because you just went when I said that about this. You can say this about your sister, you can say this about your auntie, you can say this about your grandma, you can say this about your father, your brother, anyone who's related to you. You have these conditions. Now, that's number 2. So it's not that we don't like relationships, it's that we all believe, everyone in here has a degree of agreeing that there has to be a condition to that relationship. And what are those conditions? You have to commit. If you're going to be with someone, you've got to say, I'm going to be with someone. You can't say, I'm going to be with you today, and then tomorrow I'm going to go to somewhere else, and then I'm going to come back. No, you've got to try and commit. And you've got to be loyal. You can't kind of be with someone, and then be with someone else, and then be with someone else. No one accepts that. Even like with all the stuff that's going on in movies and all the promiscuity that's happening, they still believe in these principles. Right? You never watch a drama where they're all like, yeah, let's just all have fun. It's all about heartbreak. Someone was a boyfriend and then they get upset, and they have these principles. And the last thing is there's responsibility. You can't just have a kid and then walk off. Right? Now, pick any movie Forget Muslims, pick any movie, and every single one of these would agree with those principles. Is that fair? Any chick flick, any romance, anything, you have to commit. You can't just kind of be in a relationship. You have to try and stick at it. You have to be loyal, and you have responsibilities. Now, that is, I think, an Islamic principle. And what Islam does is it says if you're going to have a relationship, you have to have these things. Now, we use the M word, which is called marriage. But marriage is just basically forcing you to say, I'm not going to just run off. So, keeps flashing. So, the Prophet ﷺ, I asked this question, but these are questions the Prophet asked. And the reason he asked them is because he wanted that reaction from you, that, kind of, that's a bit weird. But if the Prophet's asking it, then we should be asking it as well. And there's precedent for that. And I really want to emphasize this point. What the Prophet is saying and what we're saying here is a relationship is not wrong. We all believe in a relationship, but you have to have conditions for that relationship. So can you have a boyfriend or girlfriend? If they follow those three things, then of course we can. And that's what essentially what marriage is. So the next question is when you, this is a funny one, right? How many people from the adults now did you know when you were at school, if you went to a non-Muslim school, I'm sure Muslim countries are a bit different, but how many people had boyfriends and girlfriends at school and are still together today? Okay, now for the younger boys and girls, how many of you go into a relationship at school and you think, yeah, I'm going to marry her when I'm older and this is going to stick it out?
I'm in a boys' school.
You're in a boys' school. But the reason is, if we're honest with ourselves, when we go into school and we have relationships and so on, you're having a relationship and you know that you're not going to do which of those principles that I mentioned. We've got commitment, loyalty, and responsibility. So are you going to commit? Or if you're honest with yourself, probably not. You're kind of going to be there at school, and then you will go your separate ways when you leave school. Okay? How many of you are going to take any responsibility, providing and caring and all these things? How many of you would take any sense of loyalty? So you're like, that's it. We're not going to go, I think we're just going to commit to each other. The reason why you can't have a boyfriend or girlfriend is because you're not willing to do what's required. If you're willing, and you're willing to do it properly, then that's what we call marriage. And a marriage is just a commitment to do something. But essentially, one of the most important things as well is that leaving is painful, right? If you ever have a friend, what people often think about when they get married, it's really interesting. Whenever you have who owns a business here? Or has any managerial responsibilities? Isn't it really hard when you have to say to someone like, you're fired? Because you're thinking about their income, you're thinking about all these things. If I was going to do an example, but I thought it'd be too harsh. But if I was to just shout at someone and say, get out of the room, it's a very unpleasant experience. So when you're doing these things, you're only ever thinking about entering the relationship, but not thinking about when it's going to end. So why would you start a relationship when you know it's going to end? Now, I do actually know, I know one couple when I was at school who actually did get married. And they were boyfriend and girlfriend. I remember them. But we say this because the exceptions don't set rules. So you can have, just remember the job example? There are people who quit school and became multimillionaires. But do you use that as an example? Would you go and say, okay, I'm going to quit school because he quit school and he became a millionaire? No, you generally don't do that, because the exceptions is like they got lucky that something worked out for them. It's not the rule you follow. So generally, although you might know people it does work out for, I think we can all agree the vast majority of people, when they're teenagers, even if you watch it on TV, they don't stick out and get married. It's very much something that's temporary. So, flashing again. Everything okay so far? So, we'll get to the later, yeah? So, what do you need to be in a relationship? So, these are some of the things that I've kind of listed, right? So, it's really important to always, when we're getting into a relationship, one of the things that we're always doing is you only ever remember the or people only ever think about the hunky-dory things, the butterflies in your stomach, get to hold hands, you get to do things. What you don't think about is the work that you have to do to provide for the family, the responsibilities that come with it. So for many of us, relationships, and anyone who's married will know that relationships take a lot of work. It's not something that's just simple and easy. It's something that takes, for example, what happens if you have a child and you're in school? I know when I used to do UK Youth Parliament, I met a girl there, I got a girlfriend. I met a girl, and her mum gave birth to her when her mum was 16, and her grandma gave birth to her mum when she was 16, and they were so her grandma was like 32 and she was like 16 and so on, and that cycle of kind of difficulty is like it's not going to continue, because how many people are going to be able to be a mum or a dad when they're at that age? So those responsibilities are the questions you need to be asking. Are you ready for it? If you're a teenager, are you ready to be able to be a father? Right? You're barely looking after yourself. Now you've got to feed another family and another kid. You've got to think about money. Where are these kind of things going to come from? So a lot of the time when we're asking these questions, we probably don't think of these things. And sometimes, I remember actually, my dad sat me down before I got married, and he wrote down a list of all the things you've got to pay for once you get married. And eventually I was just like, okay, stop, I get the point, right? But the bills that you've got to have, your rent, your gas, your electricity, how many of you are even aware of the kind of costs you need to pay for? Your time. So you're barely fitting in homework and revision. I do a tuition stuff, and people are always like, I haven't got time, I've got football and I've got after school club and stuff. How are you going to have time to visit her family, her uncles? Because they all have a responsibility on you once you have a relationship with someone. And similarly, location. Like, what happens if they suddenly move? Like, they have to go somewhere else. Are you ready to move? Are you ready to leave your parents and these sorts of things? So all of these are designed to ask you and kind of make you think about the reasons why Allah is telling you not to do something or to do something, and whether you yourself are ready. Now, if you feel that as a 12-year-old boy or a 13-year-old girl, you're kind of like, you know what, I'm ready to do this, then it's your choice. But I run a youth group, and I don't think I've ever met a teenage boy who's kind of like, I've got a job, I've got an income, I'm ready to do this, etc. And I don't know why it keeps flashing at everyone. There you go. Which is similar to what the Prophet ﷺ said. He says, we were in the company of the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, he who can afford to get married, he should marry, because it will help him refrain from looking at other women and save his private parts from committing illegal relations. And he who cannot afford to get married is advised to fast, as fasting will diminish your sexual power or leanings. Now, the Prophet ﷺ points out, he's not saying you're not allowed to, you're perfectly valid to, but he's making note, look, if you're going to have a relationship with someone, are you able to take the responsibility? And it's very simple. It's a yes/no question. And unfortunately, nowadays, we're not taught that. When you watch about it, when's the last Hollywood movie you watched that he's kind of thinking before he kisses the girl, he gets a flashback of him working and him having to earn all the bills, and he's like, I can't afford this and stuff like that. They don't tell you that, because that's not what they think. Or he thinks, he's like, there's a really romantic moment, and they're out in the lake and they're looking at the sea and they kind of feel this bond, and then suddenly he gets a flash and he sees kids, and he's like, oh no, I've got to have kids, I'm going to run away. They don't tell you that because they don't want you to think about it, because it's all about just doing what you want to do. So how do I get to know someone then? So if you're thinking, well, if I can't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, I'm just going to stay single for the rest of my life. It's not fair, right? Or how are you going to learn? That's this common thing they say. You can learn by having a boyfriend or girlfriend. So I say the principle is the 3 S's, right? If you're going to get to know someone, you've got to be serious. Okay? Very simple. If you're planning to be committed, if you're planning to be loyal, you're planning to be responsible, then if you're having a relationship with someone, you go and you meet their family, you check, you're serious, you're not going to be messing about at school and then no one knows about it. The second is you have to be surrounded. You can't just be by yourselves in secret. You have to let people know. Because you're serious, right? You're not just doing this hush-hush thing. Her parents need to know. You need to make sure that this is something you're willing to commit your future to. And that one got covered up a bit. But you've got to also be slow. A lot of people, what happens is, and one of the wisdoms why Allah Azza Jal doesn't let us have relationships until we have marriage, is because once you have an emotional bond, it becomes very hard to break. And you might know this person's bad for you, but because you've already built a relationship, you're kind of like, I don't want to break their heart. And that's when you get all these movies and like, oh, I broke his heart, all this stuff, right? Because ultimately, the relationship you form with someone is something that you're going to be committed to. So you've got to make sure that the person you're going with is going to be someone you can actually get on with and have a bond with. Yeah? And I've heard this before because it's true. It's never... I actually heard this from a non-Muslim who attended my brother-in-law's when he was marrying my sister. He said to me, you Muslims are so lucky. He goes, when they want to meet a girl, you just have to go to a bar, and on the off chance you might meet someone, and you have to just talk to... You don't know who she is. For all you know, she could be a witch, right? You know anything about them. But you kind of have this date, and there's an expectation that you very quickly proceed. You've got to kiss her on the first date and all these things. And you very quickly build a bond, but you don't know this woman. Whereas he said, for you, as Muslims, you don't do any of that stuff until you get to know the person. And he's like, that makes so much sense. So it's not that you can't do things, it's about doing things properly, doing things right, etc. And there you go, it's emphasizing it for you again. So, what's the summary? Ultimately, we've got certain principles. If you want to, and this is going to sound weird, if you want to have a girlfriend or boyfriend, you can. But you have to do the conditions. And the conditions are, you have to plan for the long term. You have to play the future. You can't just rush into things. You have to be committed. And that commitment means you sign a paper. You get her father to sign a paper. And you say, I'm going to stick with her for the rest of my life, for as long as I can. That's all marriage is. Yeah? And if you're planning to be loyal to her, you're planning to be responsible with her, you can call it hocus pocus, whatever you like, so long as you're committed. And you can't just say, I'm just going to be with her tonight, and then I don't even know her name, or I don't even know who she is. What you've got to do is you've got to be committed, you've got to commit before, and you've got to get her family on board and commit, and then you can do what you like, because you've agreed, and that's what a marriage is. Okay? You've got to be loyal, you've got to be responsible. You've got to remember that anyone you're joining, you've got to, before you hire someone, you've got to make sure you're not going to fire them. Right? Before you marry someone, you've got to make sure you don't want to divorce them. You've got to be sure that you're comfortable with what you're getting yourself into. Similarly, don't kind of look at the odd person that's it worked out for, and these are all about general trends. Exceptions don't set the rules. Remember the negatives. So always remember that whatever we're doing here, this is something that you've got responsibilities as well. So it's not all about, oh, but I really love her and I need to do this and stuff. You've got to remember there's responsibility, there's hard work that's going to end up going into this as well. So the 3 S's we mentioned, which was be serious if you're going to go for it. It's not about messing about, it's not about going and just having fun. It's about knowing that this is a future you're committing yourself to. And it can be a very beautiful, a very amazing thing if you do it properly. And similarly, don't just kind of do this all in secret. If you're serious about it, you have yourself surrounded with people. And then don't rush things. It's about finding out about the person, learning about them before you kind of really get yourself into it, inshallah. And here's the emphasized points, inshallah. So in summary, the key things that I wanted to mention here is a lot of these things is about terminology. Islam doesn't just say things are haram to make your life difficult. Islam's doing things to make things better, to make things easier for you. And I don't think if you present this, in fact I presented this to some non-Muslims and spoke to them about it, no one's going to say to you that it's wrong that if you're going to go into a relationship that you commit. No one's going to say it's wrong that you're loyal or that you have to have responsibility. In fact, these are wonderful things. But the problem they have, and the thing we disagree with, is we formalize this. We say in order to do this you have to write it on a paper, You have to have witnesses to make sure you hold up your end of the bargain, and then you can go ahead. Now, if you're happy to do that, then this is all we call it marriage. You can call it what you like, but inshallah, Allah knows best. Inshallah.
You remind me of the movie Jackie Maguire, Tom Cruise.
Okay.
Jackie Maguire. Those were the essence of the movie.
These things.
Yeah, loyalty, responsibility.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, it's very, very, very nicely mentioned and very good displayed, and alhamdulillah, that's good. I think you will agree with me. We'll give him a joystick present.
I did.
I just want to mention one thing, which is obviously he was one of my students in the class, and I think he was in that class when I said exactly that. You just need her father to agree, your father to agree. You need to find the money. You need to arrange witnesses, and then you can get married. Whether you are in this country, if the parents agree, you can marry when you are 16. Other countries, 18 or 21. Some might allow 14. And then halal, you can have the girlfriend, but under the title marriage, her father agreed, your family agreed, you agree where to live. You might stay with your mom, she stays with her mom, her family, and you meet weekend or whatever. It does happen in Syria. They go to the army, military service, and the wife stays with her family. And every month he comes home for a week or 2 days or 3 days, so he goes and stays with his wife. So it does happen that the wife stays with her family and he stays with his family. But never ever have a boyfriend or girlfriend. Call it marriage. And then all the children went home, and 2 hours later, my wife had a phone call from her friend. I said, "What's your husband telling my children to do?" So her children went home and said to their mom, "Dr. Ghaannam says we can't get married."
I mean, one of the things I'll say is, one of the things I did a lot of mainstream youth work, because I did UK Youth Parliament, I used to work for the National Youth Agency. One of the big things they do is educating young people about sexual health. Now think about that, you're educating under 16s about relationships which are technically illegal, which is a contradiction in the UK law, right? Because technically those people, it's illegal for them to do it. Now, this is where it's really odd, because Islam, we have one very important thing, which is the stuff I mentioned here, is that if you're going to teach children about relationships, you teach them to commit, right? Here, they just give out protective kind of protection as they make sure you have safe relations, right? Whereas for us, it's all about having safe relations from an emotional, communal perspective. And I think that's the most important thing. There's a lot more to discuss here, and I'll just say one last thing, and then we can ask any other things. I said I got asked when I got asked this by the boys in the youth group. I gave them a very easy example, and this is probably the summary, right? I said if you want to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, I said fine, just bring them here. I'll take a picture of both of you together, and I'll show it on your wedding day. And they're like, oh no, wait, is that what? And the thing is, no culture accepts that. Muslim, Christian, even a Hollywood movie, you don't bring up the exes, because they know that this relationship, you're meant to commit to it. So if you're happy to take a picture with her, then you see her as someone you're being with her in the long term, then you have no problem with any of these things. But if you're somewhat, I can't do that, I won't show it later, then you're yourself are saying that you agree. And I think that's probably the summary, inshallah.
Also, that being like boyfriend girlfriend will affect the essence of those meanings, seriousness, because when you take something, first time you do it, and next time, like if someone says it's wrong, you won't take serious because you already committed. It's like it's nothing. So the essence will lose. So we need to keep the essence by not to involve.
Yeah. And one final thing, I keep saying one more final thing. I deliberately haven't brought, although I could have, I haven't brought verses of the Quran to say this is haram, or hadith to say this is haram, because you already know that. You don't need to know from a religious perspective why it's haram. what we're trying to explain here is why to a non-Muslim this makes sense. And if it makes sense to a non-Muslim, it makes sense to us as well. Because we can be proud of our religion, that we have guidance from Allah to tell us what's best. And with time you'll realize this, inshallah. Any other questions or comments? Or?
Just to add also as well, that if you did have a girlfriend, and then you say had 5-6 girlfriends, and then you got married, you're going to be comparing your wife to the 5-6 people that you had who were your girlfriends, and so therefore you put your wife in a difficult position because she's being compared. Whereas if the first person you get into a relationship with is your spouse, then it just makes it a lot easier. You just think all women are like that, all men are like that. So it means that the marriage then ends up being more long-lasting as well.
Yeah. But Ryan gave a very succinct answer when I sent this poster out. He goes, "Why can't I have a girlfriend?" He goes, "Because you're married." So, there you go. So he said something very important. He said, the more relationships you have, the more you compare. So what your marriage is about, having two imperfect people working and improving each other to get better. But when you have 10 people before you've had relationships, that one had nice hair, this one had nice breath, this one used to cook for you, this one. So what you're trying to do is, each one is imperfect, but you set yourself this, oh, but this person does this, and I need this, and so you can never get that perfect thing. And what he's saying is it becomes harder and harder for you to get into a stable relationship. Yep.
You said before, there's a sort of stigma behind what more like modern relationships where it's like serious at the start. But you said the first person that you commit to is the first person that you marry. But how do you find? Because obviously for most people the first person they find isn't going to be perfect for them. That rarely happens. So it's like the thing where if you have a co-worker or something, that you I don't know, go into some sort of environment where you get to know them first, like you ask them questions, but not to the extent that you said. But it's just like the first meeting to try and find out what they're like on the baseline.
Sure, and it's a very good question, because when you do get to meet someone, how do you get to know them? And that's the point. You get to know them. You don't get to kiss them. You don't get to hold their hands. You don't get to build an emotional relationship. Your mind to see, and you're like you meet a friend. Like I'm pretty sure you've got many friends at school, and I'm pretty sure you're very close to your friends, and I'm pretty sure you've never kissed them. But you know that this person, you get on with them because they're friends of yours, you get on with them, you share similar things and interests, right? So what Islam, when you come to look for a spouse, the idea is you have someone with you to stop that stuff going on. But the purpose of it is ultimately you can meet as many people as you like until you find someone that you get on with. And what happens is some people, it's the first person they meet. Other people, it takes 20, 30 people. That's fine. But the idea is you meet them on a person-to-person level. Are you going to be able to live with this person? Are you going to be able to enjoy their company? Before you think, oh, she's pretty or she's nice and all these. Because that's, at the end of the day, not what's going to keep a marriage together. Does that make sense? Yes.
So just from the adult perspective, if you think that the relationship you want to find the perfect match, that one is probably impossible. The second thing is that if you don't want to have a perfect match, you want to have the imperfection, and that's why you actually get perfect for each other. So that's what marriage does. And the successful marriages are that they are not perfect for each other to start with, but you have to spend, you have to be committed, you have to be loyal, and you feel responsibility. So it's not love at first sight somehow. That's something which is more of a fairy tale. So you actually work on your relationship and you make each other perfect for each other. So that's how it works. So that's why the marriages are so beautiful thing. That because the relationship is not perfect to start with, because a lot of times, especially from the Muslim countries, that would give you example, people have married but they haven't even seen each other, and they had brilliant marriages, most successful marriages, and
because they were not perfect to start with, but they become perfect because they were responsible, they were loyal, they were submissive. So the women sacrificed few things which she didn't like in the husband. The husband sacrificed and what felt like these are the things which I can get, or the improvement has been both, and they become perfect for each other.
Inshallah.
So it's not about what they are perfect to start with, how they end up.
Jazakallah khair. I
Just
will.
one, can I comment on that as well? Yeah, just Suleiman. Most of us actually met 10 or even 5. I met 3, but most of us, when 10 or 3, but it's supervised. You're not alone with them. So it might be with your mom, your dad, her mom, her dad. So it's a difference. People meet alone, I think there will be a lot of cheating. See, many people now, actually, they took an overdose. Why? Because the boyfriend who promised to marry her, she saw him went to an overdose. And she can't cope, she took an overdose. He took an overdose. Or sometimes they do harm each other. So when you are supervised and people are there and say, look, she said this, you need to think about it, whatever. Say you get